2024 so far hasn't had a lot of bangers. So it's so wonderful to, in such close succession to Deadpool and Wolverine, to have another awesome movie where there's so much to discuss in a spoiler review, both from Disney, by the way, interestingly enough. So yes, hello and welcome to my spoiler review of Alien Romulus. Again, so much to discuss. I can't wait to hear your detailed thoughts down below. Here are mine. And I'd say where I want to start off with is, thankfully, the movie did not go full Splice. Do you remember Splice? That movie came out in 2009, and its claim to fame was, let's just say, very twisted third act. And interestingly, that's how Fede Alvarez also helped make a name for himself with a very similarly twisted third act in 2016's Don't Breathe. And here, he uses the exact same technique, a very disturbing third act. And I'll give you a brief rundown in case you're watching the spoiler review without having seen the movie. All right, because it's just nuts. All right, so Isabella Merced's character, who is pregnant, injects herself with a substance that she's just been told will save her life. But it's actually, who would inject themselves with a strange substance? I wish they'd made it clear that she felt she had no choice. Because it seemed like, they seemed to make it clear that she would have made it. If she just left well enough alone. Although it was taking very long to get her into the cryo chamber. But anyway, it's actually a version of the substance from the cylinders in Prometheus, with the cylinders even making a little bit of a cameo. But unlike in Prometheus, where there was also a tainted pregnancy, Merced's character rapidly gives birth to a human Xenomorph Hybrid, who itself ages up rapidly, just like the Xenomorphs do, into a full-blown adult. Now, that's obviously a reference on the Ripley clone from Resurrection that was spliced with Xenomorph DNA. There, in that movie, after a couple more monstrous tries, Ripley only had dark fingernails. That's so ridiculous. That's that time period for you. But this is a full-on monster, although definitely human. Like back in the day, this role would have been played by Mr. Doug Jones, but here they use an actor named Robert Brzezowski. Couple of thoughts on this. I'm sure you do too. That's the whole point of this third act, to give you some thoughts. So first off, I'm glad that they didn't overtly show this creature forcefully breastfeeding from Isabella Merced. That's how she died, right? I mean, again, they weren't super clear about it, but I got the gist, with her hybrid adult child literally sucking her dry. Fede Alvarez, I'd say he can't help himself, but I think this bonkers third act is what's really exciting people about the movie and getting them talking about it. Last night, Alien was trending top 10 in the United States. In the past, Splice and Don't Breathe, which did also get people talking, were C-level horror films that audiences expected to be trashy. But to have this crazy ending at the end of an otherwise top-shelf Hollywood blockbuster that's very well made is kind of an intriguing combination, especially because, again, Alien Romulus isn't as overt as those other two movies. So this puts Alien Romulus more in the realm of Basic Instinct, Gone Girl, Fight Club, and M. Night Shyamalan's movies back when they were good. Very, very clever. Very, very clever. Now, from a business perspective as to how the film is constructed. Now, it's also great for the franchise overall. This is a cool idea. I like it. It not only is like Jurassic World, which introduced hybrid dinosaurs into the franchise to up the ante. What if we crossed a T-Rex with a Velociraptor? And you're like, well, let me see it. But it opens the door, I think, to perhaps having like a Borg-like race of hybrid humans in Alien, which are just such a wonderful addition to Star Trek that can be not only evil, but also good. I'm like, I see a future where we have a human Xenomorph hybrid on the team right next to a synthetic. In fact, I have an idea of how that will play out, and I'll share that with you in a moment. But on that note, as a producer, I would have told Fede Alvarez, give me a design I can work with going forward. The metal teeth were cool. I liked that. And I didn't even think of doing the metal teeth, but I was like, oh yeah, Xenomorphs have metal teeth. And the little tiny extendable mouth, and the way they did it is it was part of the tongue. I was like, well, all right, that's kind of creepy and weird in the way that we're going here. But overall, the creature is just too monstrous and just physically too big to interact with human characters going forward. But maybe Weyland-Yutani scientists can adjust the dosage. They're like, all right, let's try giving them 50% of that. I mean, it's a cool idea to create human xenomorph hybrids who are better suited to being in deep space. I mean, remember, the xenomorph can survive in the vacuum of space with no protection. And I was like, when Rook, who we're going to talk about, when the synthetic Rook was like, wouldn't that be cool? I was like, Rook, it would be cool. Because imagine an elite group of human xenomorph hybrids led by a cold and calculating synthetic. Oh man, sign me up. And if I was Weyland-Yutani, obviously as like a civilian, I'd be horrified. But as a Weyland-Yutani executive or a studio executive, I'm like, this is the way. And maybe that's next for the sequel, which they so clearly leave the door open for. Our two favorite characters survived. Because, they can just make more of these hybrids. This one, we can't work with this. But it's a good starting point. And that would be like Aliens, which focused on a group of human soldiers. So what if for the sequel, because this movie is so reminiscent of the first Alien, what if for the sequel, it was these human xenomorph versions of the Marines? Oh, it would be great! I love it! Also, though, I thought it was a missed opportunity to have Isabella Merced's baby not look anything like her. Like, that would have been an interesting additional layer. Because Rain, therefore, would have trouble killing something that was so clearly the child of her friend. And in many ways, an extension of her friend. You already saw that a little bit when Rain couldn't kill it as a baby because it looked like a human. She was like, whoa, wait a minute. Is that a human baby? So that really was effective. And I wish they'd continued with that. In fact, the hybrid looked nothing like Isabella Merced. I was like, who's the dad? I don't think, obviously they never clarified who it was. But I was like, damn, isn't any of Isabella Merced's DNA in there? All right, speaking of Rain, let's talk about Alien Romulus's other twisted storyline, the clear romantic attraction between Rain and the synthetic Andy. Oh, yes, Andy had been friend-zoned at the beginning of the movie, largely because he's not only a machine, but a somewhat malfunctioning one. By the way, artificial person is the term that Andy prefers. That was great. I thought it was hilarious how he kept trying to get Archie Renault's Tyler, Rain's ex, and it looked like they might be rekindling their romance, killed. Due to his directives, Andy couldn't actually outright kill him, but he wasn't trying very hard to help him. They were like, Andy, he almost didn't make it. And Andy's like, but he did, so I don't want to hear about it. I was like, nerds, Andy, you almost got him. Andy was just so likable. You were rooting for him, even in that situation. And I even like Archie Renault, but I love Andy. When Rain gives Andy the new chip that they find on the ship in Rook, who we'll talk about in a moment in this spoiler review, and Andy got the systems upgrade, not just mental but physical, I thought it was amazing and touching when he told Rain that he wanted her to see him not as a child anymore, implying, because she'd had to take care of him as if he was a child, and he wanted her to see him as a potential romantic partner. I thought that was incredible. And through the course of this movie, plus Tyler does get killed, so she doesn't really have a lot of other options, I think she starts to see Andy in that way. And I really liked when she changed his directive at the end of the movie from do what's best for her, which her father had programmed into Andy, to do what's best for us. I was like, ooh, couple goals. Sci-fi has a long history of human and AI flirtation. You've seen it many times, and outright romances. So it was smart, I think, very smart to add that to the film, especially since David Johnson's Andy is so wildly charismatic. As I said, even when he did some sketchy things during the movie, I think every single person in the audience is rooting for Andy to be the hero of the story and win the girl. And he does, I think almost for sure. I don't think, they leave a little bit of tension for the sequel, which is good. But I felt Andy was on his way. I was like, you go, Andy, you go. Those xenomorphs were crazy wingmen. And lucky for him, even though he did do some sketchy things during this movie, they could be chalked up to that nasty chip that had been put into him. But was it the chip? I loved when Rain asked him how could he leave Isabella Merced behind. Now, Andy's justification was that if he opened that door, the xenomorph would come through and kill them all. So he had to sacrifice the lesser amount of humans, 1, to save the greater amount, 2. And they had put that in the script. That's why Bjorn didn't like synthetics, because his mother had been in the mining situation on the planet. She had been sacrificed by a synthetic to save the greater number. So very good script, the way they would plant stuff and then, plant seeds and then go back and recoup them was fantastic. So on that note, again, Rain's like, how could you leave her behind? And Andy's like, well, how could you leave her like that? And Andy's like, what, you mean leave someone behind? And Rain was like, ooh, because it had been revealed earlier that that synthetics like Andy aren't allowed on the colony, the independent colony that Rain and company want to ultimately escape to. So this whole time she's been telling Andy they're going to go to this paradise, but in fact, he's not allowed in. And the plan was to just abandon him even after he would be the one who was crucial in helping them to reach that colony. And they didn't clarify where they were going to abandon him. It seemed like they were just going to abandon him in a ship in deep space. That's pretty bad. So that's why I think, Rain didn't have anything to say after that. But that's the downside of dating a synthetic. If they ever do anything you don't like, they can be like, oh, my programming's faulty. Could you fix it? I saw some comparisons of Andy and Rain to Finn and Rey from Star Wars, and I think that's an excellent comparison, particularly because Alien Romulus gets that relationship just right, and you see what Star Wars almost had. All right, let's talk synthetics. So one of the big reveals, as you know, because we just talked about it a little bit, is that on the Romulus space station, there's an abandoned, injured synthetic that looks like Ash from the first Alien movie. It can't be Ash, because Ash was destroyed. I'm not sure how I feel. I mean, this one's named Rook, okay? And the CGI is very weak. I was like, what's wrong with his head? And they're like, it's a synthetic. And you're like, it still doesn't look right. And I hope that Ian Holm's family is okay with this, by the way. I wish that maybe they had dedicated the film to him or something because he passed away in 2020. I feel they have to be very careful with using AI to recreate actors who have passed away. But yeah, he looked bizarre. But I guess it was okay, the uncanny valley not being quite traversed. Because, he was a synthetic that had been brought back from death. But I think I see why they chose him, because Ash is an iconic alien villain, the first evil synthetic. And to contrast him with Andy, I think was very effective, because Andy is a synthetic that, wants to be a real boy. But he's more than just an average boy. I think he has superpowers, which is so awesome. Because when he gets that upgrade, he has enhanced physical abilities, a huge knowledge database, and then complete access to the ship thanks to Rook's science officer status. I was like, this is fantastic. And to see Andy awaken with Rook's chip added to his system and give him more self-confidence was so amazing to see. Like when he chases after Bjorn, right? Because Bjorn's going to abandon them, right? And Bjorn had been bullying him this whole time, and Andy had just been taking it. You're like, Andy, stand up for yourself. So he finally does, suddenly, and it's very jarring for everybody. And I loved when Andy chased after Bjorn, and Bjorn was trying to close the bay doors on him, and Andy just caught it. You're like, it's almost like when Superman makes it clear, like, you don't know who you've been messing with. I've been being nice to you. That was fantastic. I loved it. It was a really amazing sequence. And just the character of Andy is so well written and so well played by David Johnson that it's up there with, I believe, as I said in my non-spoiler review, Michael Fassbender's David and also Abu Bakr Salim from Raised by Wolves. Just fantastic. All right, so of course, Rain eventually took that chip out. But I'm glad that Andy didn't totally go back to the way that he was beforehand. I was like, no, let him keep some of his upgrades. And he did. I like that Rain knew synthetic mechanics because it made her and Andy rely on each other. They had a symbiotic relationship. He wasn't just her protector. They needed each other. And if he gets hurt, as she said multiple times throughout the movie, I can fix him, which hilariously is what a lot of people say about their romantic partners. And I wonder if that's intentional. And also women do like to work on their men, and here Rain can literally do that. So that's also a fabulous metaphor as well. All right, now let's talk about some of the best sequences in the film, of which there are many, and I can't wait to hear yours down below. Now, I was impressed with the film right from the start because of the clear effort that was being put into the world building. I was like, wow, this movie is like not messing around. But the sequence where I first really connected with the film and I was like, ooh, this is special, was waking up the Facehuggers, because that was just good sci-fi. So the setup is so clever. Our group needs more cryo fuel. Sometimes often in these movies, things happen just because they should happen. So I really respect a script and a film that have these things unfold in a realistic and organic manner. They just work better because of that. All right, so they need cryo fuel for the stasis pods that they need to get because, they can't do the travel to this independent colony without being able to go into, hypersleep. I'm like, you could do 9 years, but I guess they don't have the supplies for it. All right, so I'm like, that tiny little ship can travel that far, and I'm like, I don't really know how it felt they were going to get there, but whatever. All right, so they identify that there are some additional cryofuel cells elsewhere in the ship. But what they don't realize is that the cryofuel isn't in storage; it's being used to keep all those facehuggers frozen in a holding system that is reminiscent of the ones that we saw in the prequels. So they don't see it. And I love saying cryofuel, by the way. Where's the cryofuel? We need more cryofuel. Oh, cryofuel. I'm like, what a great term. The characters don't see it, but the audience does. And that's the temperature going up on the chambers that hold the facehuggers. I was like, oh, it's getting so high. It's getting high. Got to a balmy 80. That was thrilling. It reminds me of Hitchcock's famous advice that it's more thrilling to see the bomb and know where it is and that it's going to go off than instead of just having it go off. You see that used in a lot of movies. That's how you build suspense. But this was particularly well done. I was very impressed. And while we've seen plenty of facehuggers at this point, we've never seen so many facehuggers at once. Ew, it was so scary. They were scampering around all over the place and they were aggressive. Oh, it was great. And it made for a very cool sequence, just a few scenes later where they had to get through a hallway by raising the temperature of the room to body temperature. Because just like a T-Rex sees movement, facehuggers see temperature. That was really great. I love that. Just great moment after great moment. It was so great. The movie, again, as I said in my non-spoiler review, after it got all the pieces in place, it didn't let up. So that was very rewarding. That Xenomorph being born was so creepy. The earlier one was so creepy and graphic, although that's been a running theme in the Alien franchise from day one. And to see Bjorn get killed by that acid blood. Oh, we've never really seen that before in an Alien movie. I mean, of course, we've seen it eat through plenty of ships, and I think people have sometimes gotten splashed, but I don't recall ever seeing anyone do a RoboCop, basically. Like his skin melted off, and for a moment you could see the bones in his fingers. That was incredible. I also thought when Isabella Merced had to get through the door, why didn't she close it behind her? I was like, close it. But she just kept running and she didn't look where she was going and she tripped. And then she not only fell, but fell down several stories. That was shocking. That was also extremely well filmed and set up. I saw some complaints that there aren't enough xenomorphs in this movie and they don't get enough screen time. I disagree. I mean, I can see where you're coming from, but I guess it depends on why you watch this movie. I watch it for the story and I like the suspense and the thrill. I like that kind of a scary movie, like The Shining and stuff like that in the original Alien films. But if you're just going for the horror and the slasher element, I could see maybe you wanting more xenomorphs. But for me, it was great. I felt they were on screen just enough and they got in some great kills while still retaining that dancer doing jazz hands feel from the original movie. Here they have these big figures that they built that are remote operated. But in the original movie, it was just somebody in a suit being like, ha! And it was hilarious. And I'm glad they didn't get rid of that element, which I think some of the prequels did. I think it was Covenant, where, it just lost that feel of the original Xenomorphs. All right, now let's talk about the nest. And thanks to having seen Aliens, I knew what Andy, Rain, and Tyler had stumbled upon before they did. They're like, let's turn on the lights. And I'm like, it's a nest. I know what it is. It's a nest. That's so fun. That's so rewarding for fans. And they not only did a nest justice, but Fede Alvarez added some great new elements. I loved the zero gravity acid blood ballet. Oh, that was so good. And this is one of the sequences where I was like, how is this movie not offered in 3D? And if it was really good, like Avatar 3D, you'd be like, oh, the acid's near me. And I also loved the blue light on the floor. I'm not sure what the blue light was for, but it was super cool. I seem to recall a blue light from one of the prequels, but I couldn't find a picture of it. Maybe I did by the time I edited this video, but I had trouble finding a picture to confirm. And then, of course, Rain's gun that could auto-aim. This type of gun, of course, is from Aliens, but I don't recall it ever having this exact auto-aim feature. I like that it readjusted itself, Like it full-on was a moving gun. Like you just kind of held it up in the general direction and it was like, thank you, I'll take it from here. And just kind of moved around by itself. I liked it. I mean, it sounds ridiculous when you pitch it, but they made it cool. And perhaps a component of a future theme park ride, right? They're like, oh, engage your auto-aim gun. And they're like, I can point it in the general direction, no problem. Then the elevator shaft. Oh, this was a fantastic extended sequence. They got so much use out of this elevator shaft. Not only reminded me of Die Hard, but Star Wars has used a similar area of space stations quite effectively multiple times. So here they used anti-gravity to quickly travel up the elevator shaft, shooting the gun to create a blast to send them upwards. Or in Rain's case, she accidentally shot herself going down. And then, of course, when the gravity turned off, she really was headed for the ground floor. But she didn't die because the Xenomorph caught her with its tail. I was like, how's she going to survive this? And the Xenomorph caught her. That Xenomorph, I don't know why the Xenomorph didn't kill her right away or made sure she didn't die when it caught her. She didn't pull a Gwen Stacy. So hilariously, though, also with the Xenomorph, I was like, what's going on with the Xenomorph? Because after the elevator did come through again and killed all the other Xenomorphs that were climbing up the shaft, squish, this one emerged from the side and was like, surprise, still alive. And you're like, hilarious. It was almost like in Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom when that hybrid dinosaur almost was like twirling its evil mustache. It was like laughing. That was hilarious. But then this allowed Andy to have his big hero moment when he killed that Xenomorph and repeated Ripley's famous line from Aliens. But of course, in Andy's particular fashion. It was great. As for the very end of the film, yes, just like the first Alien movie, Romulus has two endings. You're like, it's over. No, it's not. It was a great touch to have whatever that sand was in the cargo bay of the ship. They came from a mining community, but this was almost like sand. It was very cool. Not only did it allow us to see the evolving footprints of the human Xenomorph Hybrid, but when Rain used the remaining acid from the creature's birth to open up a hole in the floor to create a vacuum into space, the sand created this absolutely stunning like tornado of sand around Rain with like this space in the background. And you were like, that's beautiful. That was great. The swirling rings of the planet, by the way, that Romulus, the space station, eventually crashed into, that was the event that they were trying to avoid during the whole movie, the countdown from the space station. They were like, we're going to crash into these rings in like 39 minutes or something like. So that's how much time's left on the movie, huh? I love when they do that kind of stuff. But they were very beautifully, but also powerfully rendered. We see these rings around in space around planets, and I think we just see them from afar, so they seem static. But the reality of the fact, like in Star Wars, you can often see that they're like these little rocks, sometimes big rocks. Acolyte had a sequence in the end where May was trying to get away through the rings of a planet. But here, the rings were spinning. So it was almost like, like a river of rock. And so that, of course, would really, chop the space station or anything that came in contact with it up. And it was just really well done. It was really well thought up. It was really well visualized. It was very well used in the story. And of course, like most Alien movies, there was a long, complicated sequence that needed to be done manually to save the day. So you got to always have that. They're always so fun to watch and really put you on the edge of your seat. And this one was the same. And I thought it was very clever that she did the final lever by pulling on her, her cord, which had been wrapped around it. So that was really, really smart. I thought that was great. Great movie. I think most fans, some of you don't like it. I've seen some people not liking it. I don't know if you're just doing that to be cool, but some of you do have genuine complaints. That's fine. But I would say the majority of fans feel that this is the third best in the franchise. And that's incredible for the franchise to rally like this at this point. I definitely think it's the Jurassic World of the Alien franchise, and hopefully, breathes new life into it. And in fact, on that note, before my showing, they had a tease of Alien Earth coming to FX and Hulu in 2025 from Noah Hawley. Still happening! And Hawley, of course, has a very impressive track record. So it looks like Disney is doing a fantastic job taking care of its big Fox franchises that it purchased. Aliens, Apes, I love the recent Apes movie. This is better though, but Apes was still very solid. And of course, Avatar. I loved the most recent Avatar, and I'm so excited for where it's going next with the fire version of the Na'vi. All A's, by the way, Alien, Apes, and Avatar. But there's a P in there too, because Predator, not only did it do well on Prey on Hulu, but Disney has re-signed that creative team to make a new movie that will be coming out soon as well. All right, so that's my spoiler review of Alien Romulus. Share your own thoughts, your own spoiler thoughts down below. I can't wait to hear them. Be sure to subscribe. And of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.